it was a gift that I gave myself. I really wanted to explore what like healing and self-care was all about because people use that word around me all the time and I didn't understand what it meant.
Welcome to the Space Holders Medicine Podcast. We're your hosts, Malvina and Stephanie. This podcast is a sanctuary for space holders to delve into the unique medicine they offer. Each episode will explore their personal journeys, diverse modalities, and the profound experiences that inspire and shape their work. Join us as we uncover the transformative power of their craft. Enjoy!
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Space Holders Medicine Podcast. My name is Malvina, and together with my co host Stephanie, we are excited to introduce our guest for today's episode, Claire. She's originally from the US. She's a Korean American expat who has been enriching the lives of students and educators alike. And since 2017, she has been living in the vibrant city of Singapore, bringing her wealth of knowledge and experience to the educational community. Hi, Claire.
Hi,
Thank you
Malvina.
for being here.
Hi, hello, everybody in the virtual world.
Woohoo.
I just want to introduce my dog, George, because he's going to be on my side. And if you see like a furry head floating by, that's what it is.
Yeah, George is going to be holding space for us
Yes,
while we're doing this
that's very
podcast.
good at that.
All right. So, yeah, Claire, thank you so much for being here. How did you start your journey into space holding or your journey into understanding what space holding is?
Mm. So currently I'm a teacher and I've been teaching for the past 17 years. And it's a field that I got into without understanding a lot about space holding, but just knowing how I felt to be around young children, especially. And what I knew was I loved their positive energy and their ability to be in the present moment at any time. So if you observe children, they're always playing, they're always laughing, and they're always in their bodies as much as they can, and that comes really naturally to them. And I knew how I felt to be around that energy around in high school. I just knew I liked it. It was somehow very relaxing for me. I know that's counterintuitive thinking like, well, how is being around children relaxing? But I think when you're around positive energy and when you're around people who are naturally very present, it has that effect on you. And so I think that was what I was attracted to now that I'm reflecting back. I just knew I liked being around in that space with them. And I wanted to be the person to hold that space as much as possible. Currently, I'm really focused on play-based learning and how that affects not only learning, but healing as well for adults. And I just really love being in the presence of people, experiencing the present moment, enjoying what they're doing, and like losing track of time.
Thank you, Claire. I love that so much. I feel like what we are really receiving is the presence, the pure presence that being with children illuminates within you. And I wonder if you might have a story to share about a time that this has really touched you and it kind of like inspired your life trajectory to be a teacher, to work with kids.
So initially, when you go through the education system, like it's around high school that you have to sort of decide, right? Like, oh no, what do you want to be? And or after graduating college. So initially I wanted to go abroad and I uh lived and studied abroad in East Africa for about 5 months. And I was really interested in studying like community agency and empowerment and like what does that look like? And um it was coming home after that experience of knowing like, a lot of that can be done within my own community. And it's really more appropriate for me to use my sort of like cultural background and the place that I felt at home to bring that change at home. while that was going on, I also knew that I loved being around children and their sense of like playfulness and their ease of laughter and being able to drop into their bodies at any moment. Um, so it was really that coming home from that experience, knowing that I wanted to do that at home, and then figuring out um, why I loved working with children in that setting. So it wasn't just one experience. I think it was lots of different trials and error, figuring out where I want to be, and that took me going abroad for several months.
That's really interesting because it seems like you've had quite a number of experiences. You have your own, you have your exposure as you're traveling, and now you've been working with kids. So I'm actually very curious, based on all that, what are the essential qualities or skills that you feel are necessary to hold space with integrity and authenticity?
Wow, it's a good question. To be a space holder, to have an impact, some of the qualities that I know that I look for are intentionality, authenticity. So I really, some of the best spaces that I've been a part of that was being held was by or through people who really experienced either hardships in the past, and they were like seeking a pathway for themselves, and they um, received a lot of healing, and then they figured they wanted to give that to somebody else. So I think authenticity and strong vision for why they do what they do, because you can always feel that, like you can always feel a space when the person holding it is coming from a genuine, honest place.
Thank you, Claire. Do you have a story or an example of a particularly impactful or transformative experience when you were being held space for?
Yeah, good question. So I, you know, growing up, I've experienced some traumatic experiences where I was taken out of my body. So like I've coped by being outside of my body and sort of afraid to sort of get back in it. And it was through dance, spaces where people were holding movement, that I learned to enjoy getting back in my body. There was a brief period where I was laid off from work. It was like in my 20s, and there was a huge round of layoffs in school systems. And I had been so burnt out, but because I was so dissociated from my body, I couldn't connect. And it wasn't until I distinctly remember, it was just one random day where I could not move. I was in class. It must have been that the kids have gone home, and I literally couldn't move a step. And, and that was around the time that the layoffs happened. And thinking back, it was a gift that I gave myself. I really wanted to explore what like healing and self-care was all about, because people use that word around me all the time, and but I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't understand what it meant to hold space for myself. And now that I didn't have to go to work anymore, it was like opportunity and time and space to explore. And so I just started by doing things that I knew felt good, or that it felt that I liked, and dance was definitely one of them. It started out with, just going to dance classes where you would follow somebody else's choreography with fun music, and you're just trying to keep up. um, and then I discovered the type of dancing where you're allowed to explore and really be in tune with your body, and um, sort of practicing going in and out of being like holding things in your mind versus holding things in your body, like, and noticing sort of the differences in between both. And it was that experience, I think, that was transformative for me, where I realized, like, oh my gosh, it feels amazing to be in my body, like all the joy that you can feel like in this suit, and in the moment, it was just so transformative. And I thought, there it is, like this is what I want to pursue. And so from there, I think it was just really honing in on that, like, okay, I think being in my body is the key. And then I'm linking that to mindfulness and meditation and yoga and just all the spaces that can be specifically held to return back home to yourself.
I really love that. You know, my my experience with movement actually only started around the time when I met Steph, which was sometime last year. Like that's when I learned about somatics and how important it is. I've always just taken movement for granted, right? And it's after a while I realized, holy crap, this is like it's really therapy and very therapeutic. And it's like um a moving meditation where you just allow for energy to move and spread out and like you said, just get out of this space and just be able to feel feel and connect with your body or vessel.
Well, that's beautiful because most people think of dance as like, because I think dance spaces, it depends on like how it's being held and what the intentionality behind that too. And I think a lot of people find dance spaces quite traumatic. Like
Mm.
I know so many professional dancers who absolutely are so afraid to make mistakes and it's about perfection. And I think if that's the intention, like if that's, then it goes against, I think, um, what we're talking about. But I think if it's the kind of space where you're allowed to just return home to yourself, and then that gets like held and witnessed in a very gentle and supportive, loving way, then I think like transformations can actually absolutely happen.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, how has your journey into embodied movement speak to how you hold space for yourself now or even at work?
Mm. So I kind of just want to add a bit of a disclaimer too. Like I met Stephanie as during a time where I was really seeking that space for myself, like creativity and expression. And she was holding a was it Voices of the Wild stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, Voices of the Wild.
I mean, that really made an impact on me and then the space that you held, Steph. It was just so gentle and I truly felt seen. And it was just an honor to see others and give that to others. And so anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. And then I think I just always remember being in your body is so important. Like I think I gravitate towards that. I think play-based learning is a way of getting into your body while you learn, because you're exploring with all of your senses, right? Like your touch here, what you see and what you smell and what you feel. Um, uh, and I think a sense of fun and exploration is sort of your compass. Like if you feel like you're having fun while you're doing it and you're able to really invest all of your energy in it without it being pressure, without there being a lot of pressure for it to look a certain way or to feel a certain way, then you actually get a lot of learning. And I think that's where transformation happens.
Thank you. I wonder, Claire, if you could share a bit more about play-based learning and how it's different from maybe like the more cognitive style of learning, the impact you see on children and their bodies when they're in the classroom.
I mean, actually, that's an area that I'm actually currently exploring myself. What is play-based learning? And I know when people hear it, it can be easily dismissed as like, well, that's just, kids just doing what they do naturally. And it really is that. I think we were built to play and we were built to explore. It's only through schooling that kind of gets sort of knocked out of you. um, and it's a shame. So for me, what I think is it's a very intentional space where um, the students are allowed to explore at their own pace and follow their own interest and um, and explore without the sense of time, if that makes sense. What it isn't, I know, it's not a disorganized, disorienting, kind of chaotic space. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like very intentional spaces where the students are engaged in the activity of their choice, and they're fully engaged. So they're using all their senses and they're engaging with each other. And um, there's a lot of exploration involved. Like, for example, as a teacher, I try to give those spaces or create those moments as much as possible. And to set up some structure to it, I give some options. You can choose to do this, this, or this, or this. And when I observe kids reacting or being responsive in those spaces, they always gravitate towards the same activities time after time after time. And so I think that there's something about finding your own calling in that, like, so sort of discovering what you're naturally very good at and being able to sort of explore in a very non like judgmental and non-pressured environment. Because I think the opposite of that is sort of unfortunately how a lot of schooling gets done right now. It's like you sit a certain way, I'm the vessel of knowledge, I give you the knowledge, you take the knowledge, and then you repeat it back to me just so that I know you've learned something. The difference is it's astounding. I judge it by like how much light is in their eyes. And as a teacher, I that's sort of what I look for. Like, can I see joy in their eyes? And if not, then I'm doing something wrong.
May I ask, how young are the kids that you teach?
Currently, I work with 6-year-olds all the way up to 8, so between 6 and 8.
Got it. Has there been a memorable experience that you've had while holding space for these kids of that age?
So when you're teaching, your day is just packed full of like so many different experiences. You can never say you had a fully great day, or you can never say you had a fully like awful day, because there's just so many things that happen during the day. It's almost like having to be a fighter pilot where you're making these like moment to moment decisions. And I think that's why you're just so exhausted. Like, the most memorable moments was when I was in the dance space, right? Like exploring dance for myself, and I wanted to bring that into the classroom. I remember it was like my first time, and I brought like a group of my grade 2 students. This was back in California. I like booked the auditorium. I brought like a little boom box, because back then we had like boom boxes. And I, made a playlist, and I knew exactly the kind of space that I wanted them to have. And I was really nervous because it was just so special, and I was so like, hoping that they would feel what I felt, and receive the magical gift of dance. Um, Lo and behold, because I was in that mind space, I realized like holding space with something that's so special to you can be really tricky, because um if you're not intentional with your own kind of emotions and feelings in the moment. Because I was so controlling in that moment that I think I actually did opposite of what I intended to do. um because I was focusing on the kids that I felt wasn't into it, as opposed to the students who were. And so I got the whole gamut during that experience. I got students telling me like, "This is the best day ever." I mean, literally the best day of their life. It's like, really? Okay. Or kids who were just so incredibly uncomfortable that they just wanted to hide. And so I think that particular moment, I think, taught me a lot. And I understood, if I really want to hold this kind of space, I have to be really mindful about my own insecurities, because it's really my own insecurities. It's not has anything to do with them, but it's powerful. I mean, the students who really felt like it was the best day ever, I really hope that they take a piece of that moment with them.
I love that so much, Claire, and also like your courage, your enthusiasm, and also your passion in sharing your love for dance with these kids and giving them an opportunity to experience the magic that you have been receiving from being in the dance space. And even with the kids who felt so massively uncomfortable, I feel like that was also an opportunity for them to meet a side of themselves that, if not for their experience, maybe they would never discover like, this is actually what makes me uncomfortable, or this makes me uncomfortable, but I'm curious about it. and in their own way or their own journey of life, going down that road of exploration. When you're saying that, I was just feeling so much for you as a space holder, and also for the nervous kids, because there was me, like, especially with free movement or dancing without any a specific choreography. It's just not what I've been accustomed to in the landscape of Singapore growing up. And it's always like dress this way, sit this way, speak like this. So there's always certain protocol of how to arrange and organize my body. And when someone gives me a cue, do whatever you want or whatever you feel like doing, I'm like, no, give me instructions. And there is so much vulnerability with it. So speaking of vulnerability, I just wonder, how do you balance, or how do you meet with vulnerability as you hold space for these kids who don't necessarily have the same filter as adults, in terms of, like, you know what they say, sometimes they can be really hurtful. How do you deal with that in the workplace?
With children, I realize like modeling is so important because at that age they don't have the words and they don't have the actual words. And as adults, it's really important to physically model exactly what you want them to say. And so I want to like make an example. Like it's not sort of like act this way, talk this way, move this way. But here's an example. I'm going to show you by example. So here's how you address conflict. Here's how you address a misunderstanding. Here's how you actually communicate with each other and with yourself. You'd be surprised at how young negative self-talk can actually start. And I've heard is you see 6-year-olds like, oh, I'm so stupid, or oh, this is I'm never gonna get this, or oh, I'm just not good at that. It starts really young. And I think as educators and as adults, it's really important to be mindful about or observant about what they're actually saying to themselves, and to be able to like give them an alternative tape, right? Well, instead of saying I'm never going to be good, why don't we can say this? It's really popular now. They call like growth mindset talk, and but I do think it's really important, and children especially, they believe what you say. To them, what you say becomes a reality, and how you model it becomes sort of their personality. I remember a student of mine. In the classroom, I've observed a lot of great teachers modeling like communication or nonviolent communication. And instead of so when they are conflicts, and in the classroom there's so many different conflicts that happen, and they happen all the time. Oh, so and so said this, or so and so looked at me funny, or so and so isn't playing with me. A lot of those come up. And I think those are like really good teachable moments to model, well, what can you do? How do you address this assumption that you have about this other person? And one of the students really took on to a particular strategy called like I messages. Basically, when you have a conflict, you don't start with you, or you did this. You start with I feel this way. And he really took it to heart, and he went home and he actually told his mom, and his mom actually came back and said like, oh, it's brought such peace to my house because with his sister, when there's a conflict, he actually uses it, and is able to sort of transform the energy in the moment, where it could either turn to a fight, or a back and forth fight, or it can neutralize it. And I think he's learned to neutralize it. And yeah, that was really powerful for me to hear that. And so I think that's really important, is just to model how you want the students to talk to themselves and to each other, and model open communication. And it's hard, adults have a hard time doing it, but I think with children, it's a lot easier to teach because they're so
Yeah.
open, you know?
That's really incredible, because I feel like this is having these tools or this insight as little kids. Um, they'll take it with them, hopefully, as they grow up, and they wouldn't have to deal what we how we have to struggle with it, right?
Right.
Yeah, very
I mean,
cool.
I hope so. I really hope like when there's a
Yeah.
conflict, they go up to the person and be like, I want to give you an iMessage. you know, like
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's more mindful versus going on attack mode, right? Like I think there's also that which allows for whoever's receiving that iMessage to be a little bit more open or receptive to the person delivering it.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's really interesting to watch too. I feel like I'm like a marriage counselor sometimes, where like, I teach them to look at each other, take turns speaking, really listen, um, and it takes maybe a couple of tries, but once you
mm,
practice it enough, like the students, children really take it on, and then
yeah.
become like second nature.
So it's I feel like there's also a lot of maintaining connection with
Mm.
that, right? Often we just decide to disconnect and we're like, like we just go off on our own. So yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to know, how do you cultivate self-care and prevent burnout while holding space for others? I'm sure it's a lot, like being a teacher for, this age group or these kids, as well as, having your own stuff to go through. How are
Mhm.
you able to take care of yourself?
Good question. I honestly, I think that's something that I'd like to figure out myself currently. Recently I've gone through a big change, right? I've just resigned from my job, and it's a pretty drastic move, but it came on the same along the lines of self-care and knowing when to walk away. So, I think I've just been taught that like you make it work. Even if you're uncomfortable, even if it's hard, you make it work. You stick it out, you don't quit, you and no matter what the cost is to you, you succeed at it, right? I'm teaching myself the opposite, where you know what, if my body tells me that this is unhealthy and I'm feeling a certain way and it doesn't feel easeful, then there's something wrong. There's a mismatch, and learning to first notice it like quicker as soon as it comes up, and then learning to then discern, do I need to walk away from this? And then actually having the agency and the choice to do it. Um, so yeah, I mean that's a lesson that I'm currently learning over again. It's a familiar lesson. I've learned it a few times in the past, but it didn't come to me as fast. It took a lot longer for me to realize it. So this is my what, second time that I'm walking away from a job. um like without finishing up a contract, without actually having to like finish up, tidy it up nicely, put it in a nice bow. Um so it feels messy, and it feels there's a lot of like self-doubt coming in, and a lot of self-criticism about, well, that's really irresponsible of you, Claire. Like what do you mean? You couldn't have finished the job that you started. I think self-care for me at this point is really about honoring my values and honoring and like walking in alignment, trying to walk in alignment in every facet of my life. So um even this calling for more play and more joy and following play-based learning came from this experience of resigning from my job and questioning like, well, what about this environment wasn't aligning for me, and what wasn't working, and how did I get myself here? um and so I think self-care isn't always about like taking bubble baths and things, although it's really nice. I think sometimes self-care is about doing the self-work and like giving myself space to reflect and to really connect, even if it's uncomfortable. I mean, I would like to hear from you guys in the community, like anybody figure out preventing burnout and self-care while holding this important space for other people.
Claire, it sounds like you are currently navigating such a big transition, and huge applause to you for being so brave and following really sometimes the messages, sometimes the screams of your body.
I appreciate that. And anytime I tell somebody like I resigned from my job, their first response is congratulations. So I'm like, oh, okay. You're really happy for me. Great. Scary. I mean, it's scary,
Yeah.
but it draws that reaction from people. So I think there's something about that. I think a lot of us just want to up and like leave our
Mm.
jobs.
Especially if not we are not happy in our job, but we stay for whatever reasons that we stay for. So it feels like when you share that you're leaving your job that doesn't bring you so much joy, there is a sense of living vicariously through you.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people are
Yeah.
very excited for me.
Yeah. Secondhand liberation, secondhand
Yeah, I think
freedom.
so.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question about burnout, I feel like it is really, I don't feel like there is a static sense of balance. You know, it's like when we ride a bike, we are either going to be too far left, too far right. And it's through being on either ends that we learn balance. And in each moment, in each season, balance is going to look different. Our capacity before, our capacity of how much we can show up for in a healthy way, in a sustainable way will be different. And also like for me personally, what feeds me in every season is also different. So right now it is to take the morning for myself, to wake early, to journal, to take a long time to prepare a nourishing breakfast, and then to take an even longer time enjoying that breakfast, enjoying a chai with breakfast, and then going for a walk on the beach before I begin to think about anything related to work. So it's like pouring into myself at the start of the day so that for the rest of the day I have capacity and I have more than enough to pour and share with others. What about you, Mel?
As you were saying that, I'm just like, damn, that is like a beautiful
Nice.
thing to dedicate. That sounds so yummy. No, because Claire, I can absolutely relate. So I resigned from my full-time job last year, August, right? Exactly. Because I feel like a lot of
Congratulations.
the times we stay for a job because of security as one of the reasons, right? Even though if it's like taking so much of our soul. Um, so I've still been in the process of deconditioning, quite frankly, right? Deconditioning those patterns. Although, I've started some rituals for myself, whether it's meditation, sitting with ceremonial cacao, and just being here, being with me. But like I said, I'm still learning to apply that consistently. Like if there's something that gets thrown at me, or a project that gets thrown at me that's where I'm not able to control my time so much, how am I able to still honor honor my presence and honor my space, right? So like Steph said, it's definitely much like a balance. It is a balance because every season is going to look different, and I just need to find ways to tweak in a way that is in alignment to me. Thank you for sharing, guys.
Mean, I feel like those 9 to 5 jobs, the kind of as a teacher, it's like actually 7:30 to 4 or whatever. But I like those jobs where you have to start first thing in the morning, and you're there for 8 hours or 9 hours, sometimes more, and then you're depleted by the end of the day. It just so goes against like what you've built for yourself, Steph. That slow sense of morning where you can give to yourself first, and all of that is just so hard to do. And but that's what most people do, right? And in order for you to give that to yourself at one of those like 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 jobs, like you have to get up at 4 in the morning. Which I mean, like you can, but it's so tough, especially when you get stuck in that cycle where you're drained, and then you have to like try to figure out how to replenish before you can get up and do it all over again. It's just that I think I really want to move away from now. Like I just want to put that out in the universe. Like I want to be able to give myself exactly that time, whatever, however I earn my money, just be able to give myself that time and space first before I can hold space for others. Cause I think that's so important. Like you just said, both of you guys, like it's really important to give it to yourself first. And I think it's our job to intentionally go after it, right? And not feel selfish about it, or like that you're being self-indulgent in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also so much to be said about fulfillment. Like when something that we do, whether it's a job or just something that we do feels really fulfilling, it's going to feed us. Like that is self-care, making the decision to fill our day and to invest our time in something that really, really gives to us. And I remember a time whereby I was working so much and the money was great. And at the same time, when I wasn't working, instead of developing myself or learning, which I love so much to do, I was just decompressing. And to decompress, I would go on Netflix and I would just binge while I was enjoying what I was doing too much of that. And as a result, with the rest of my time, it wasn't nourishing me in a way, it was just me numbing out. And that was also why, like instead of going to bed early or making these healthy decisions, it's like really being frozen in a position in front of my laptop watching shows instead of going to sleep or scrolling on Instagram instead of sleeping, and then like beginning my day bright and early and having that start that now I have, but it really took time to cultivate and discipline, and also like big changes so that I'm working or my workflow is really resonant to how I enjoy dedicating my time instead of like just doing something that I like and then doing so much of that it also creates burnout in that way.
And that was a job that you actually enjoyed doing.
Yeah,
Like imagine,
yeah.
imagine a job where you don't enjoy what you're doing, which is I think where most people are at, and they're just stuck because they're scared to leave. So thanks so much for sharing that. I like that actually gives you a lot of insight. Like balance truly is key. As cliche as that
Mm.
sounds, I feel
Mm.
like too much of one thing isn't good for you. You're absolutely right.
No, no, exactly.
And
So, Claire, what advice would you give to individuals who aspire to do what you do or aspire to become space holders, currently navigating their own space holding journey?
good question.
What would you say to Claire 17 years ago?
Run, Claire, run away. And app developing. Um, become an influencer. Yeah. So, um, I think the wise part of me would say to the part of me 17 years ago, like really connect with yourself, with the community, people who are like-minded, who can in turn feed you, and you can feed them. And because I really do believe that with this work, you can't do it by yourself. um, you really do need a strong and vibrant and healthy community wherever you can find them. Because obviously what you do involves other people, right? Also, like, really get comfortable with your fear. I would really tell myself, like, when fear creeps up, like, be curious about it. Don't react to it, or don't run away, or don't um like get into fight or flight or freeze. But really discover what that's about and become friendly with it and let it guide you. And also, like, that it's not as complicated as I'm making it sound to be. Like in my mind, it's I'm complicating it in my mind, but really it's simple. Like it's about listening to your body and knowing what feels good and having the courage to follow that, right? And developing your creative muscles to be able to, like, form and create and um, make it appear in reality what's just sort of appear. So I think that's it. Like creativity, community, get comfortable with your fear, and yeah, just go for it.
So powerful, Claire. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed chatting with us and share. We're so very appreciative of your wisdom. and sharing your experiences so openly.
You know what? Thank you so much for holding this space for me and for your listeners. And you guys do it in such a gentle, like loving, very appreciative way. And it inspires me to share and to be vulnerable. I wanted to ask you guys as well, like what does a good space holder possess?
Based on, I mean, also from experience as well as conversing with people, I feel like space holding is more of like not trying to fix, right? Not trying to
Mm,
fix other people when someone comes to you or someone just needs to be heard.
mm,
It's just creating that space to sit with them and acknowledge them and witness whatever they're experiencing. Um, and pretty much releasing any kind of expectations that we might be projecting onto them,
yeah.
whether it's in professional or personal, right? Personally, I feel like it's a little bit more challenging for my personal relationships, just because there's a little bit more of an attachment, right, with family and really close friends. But yeah, it's a process, and it's always like a learning experience for me. Like
Mm.
every situation is an opportunity to learn how to become a better space holder. Yeah. Steffi?
Mm, I have a mantra that goes simply like clean your mirror every day, you know? And when I say that, it's similar to what Mel says about both not taking on projections from others and also not projecting onto others. And I feel like it's very, very hard to do because we are all human with our own decades of experiences that if it's left unprocessed, it's very easy for something small, something that looks remotely similar to the experience once upon a time, for us to have all of those emotions being brought to the surface. And if we aren't aware, it could come. It it it's always going to be felt, but it could also come across overtly to the person in front of us. And also, like as space holders, there is a certain power dynamic to be aware of. That's for sure. There's this beautiful book like the power in the helping profession or something like that, and it speaks about how it can just very easily tip over to um abusing the power that's being sh- offered or shared in that space. And from a very, very early stage in my journey, way before I even entertained the thought of being a somatic therapist, I was in a yoga teacher training, and the teacher said affirmation, acknowledgement can be very seductive. People liking you, looking at your attendance can really feel so good for the ego. And even when students praise your class, it's very important to take it with a stance of neutrality, because when we don't, and then when the attendance goes down or when the affirmation stops coming, we really begin to question our worth or our value. And that's where doing our work, and that's metaphor for cleaning the mirror. It's doing our work, whether it is having a space holder for ourselves. Maybe it's going for therapy, maybe it's going for a group process, which was what nourished you on your journey, like the embodied movement. Any form that we feel that we are being taken care of, and any kind of container, including self containers, like the morning pages, for example, or the daily meditations, daily sits. Um, that allows us to introspect within ourselves, to get to know ourselves a little bit more. It allows for a cleaner mirror for us to hold space for others. So that's a big one. And when we have a clean mirror, that's when we are really able to offer our gift of presence, just pure presence for another. And like what Mel said earlier, it's really not about rushing to rescue, to fix, to heal someone else, especially when they show up with, vulnerability. They show up with issues, problems that we feel like, I know what will help you. But the thing is, we are actually not them. We actually don't know. We don't know what might necessarily be the best thing for them. And in those situations, the most empowering thing we can do is to guide them to come to land upon their own truths, to land upon their own solutions, or to come into acceptance of the situation and just allow everything to soften, because it's that we are then returning to them the power, their power, or reminding them of their power that's always already within them. And to me, that's really, really impactful and empowering, because we are then being an equal explorer, a co-explorer, a guide that's on the journey with them. We're not up on a pedestal as a space holder.
Mm. Thanks for that. Gosh, I it really resonates with me, like the quote that you have, clean my own mirror every day. And I think a lot of times, how many of us walk around the world with smudged mirrors and then with the illusion that we're seeing things clearly, right? And so I think that's really impactful. I actually wanted to ask another question because you guys host this space in the virtual world. What's particular about holding space for people online?
Yeah. The first time I've experienced it was me being a recipient, me seeing my therapist online. And I loved it. I loved it because, practical reasons. I didn't have to hustle with the rest of the people in public transport on the way to Orchard. So that was brilliant. But more importantly, for me, I felt also like the safety, the familiarity of being in my bedroom when I'm having therapy. It gave so much to me, more than I imagined that it would. And being in the safe space of a safe sanctuary of my home, and in particular my bedroom, I felt that I was able to be just that bit more honest, that bit more vulnerable before my therapist. And as a therapist, I've received too the same feedback from clients, that because there is kind of like a screen separating us, um, this screen that also dissolves time and space, because I see people at all different time zones and across the world. So it really connects us, but at the same time, it also creates a kind of like a safety. And just because of the context of it, clients are then able to go deeper and be more honest with themselves and with me in session, which I feel like is one of the greatest gifts that transitioning onto this virtual platform has offered.
Mm. Thanks for that. Yeah.
I mean, when I receive one-on-one, I'm similar to Steph. I like being in my bedroom. I like being comfortable. I like being held. I feel that it varies depending on what's being offered. Um, if it's a cacao ceremony, for example, which I do facilitate, I prefer doing it in person. And often people like to show up in person because they want to be held in person and want to be in the space with their presence and everybody else. So yeah, it really does vary, but yeah, often most of my sessions have been like one-on-one sessions have been conducted in the virtual space. There's a different kind of spaciousness within Zoom. Yeah, there's something to that.
Mm. I was pretty surprised to find that, you know what, with the right community, the connection's still there. Like it's just as meaningful and as impactful. So it really isn't about like whether it's done in person or in the virtual world. It really is about the intentionality of people and just how vulnerable they are.
I realized with all sessions with clients, the ingredients to healing, and in this context of like doing it across Zoom, would be the intention to heal and also presence, like everyone's intention and everyone's presence. And that really transcends the time, the space, the distance, that separates us, because when our energies are here, it's very felt. Thank you so much for the questions, and thank you so much for the conversation, Claire. We are so grateful to have this opportunity to chat with you, and also to learn of your journey that led you to where you are today. And I am so excited for what's to unfold for you as you move through this transition.
Thank you guys. I've received
you.
so much, and it's really an honor to be invited and to be invited to this space. And it's exciting to know, like, you just never know who hears your message and what and how it will transform for them.
Bye, everyone.
Well,
Thank
bye
you.
everyone.